All right, welcome back to the Krueg Show, everybody. Larry Krueger back with you on a Friday. And it's not just any Friday. It's the Friday after the Thursday night where John Lynch acquired Christain McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. 4 picks going to the Panthers. McCaffrey's coming to the Niners. Is he going to play Sunday against the Chiefs? We don't know. And if he is, it'll probably be in a limited package. But joining us, a man who is just in the know when it comes to Christain McCaffrey, first of all, former Rose Bowl winning quarterback of the Stanford Cardinal, also Stanford color analyst for years and years with Dave Fleming and Scott Reese on KMBR 1050. The great Todd Husak, was front and center for every one of Christain McCaffrey's collegiate games, and he's with us on the Krueg Show to talk McCaffrey. Todd, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you too. Still love watching Stanford football. Not as much the last couple of years, but still involved. Still live here in the Bay Area, and pumped for the Christain McCaffrey news. I was, as you know, I was a big believer in him coming out of college. Injuries have done as much to sidetrack his NFL career as much as anything. But I think he's in a situation now, surrounded by weapons with I think one of the best offensive minds in football. I'm very excited to see what the next few years of his NFL career hold.
Well, it's so funny because we would, I would have you as a regular guest on the Stanford pregame show, and we got to be friends. We talked a lot about Stanford guys headed to the pros, and you were a big supporter of Christain McCaffrey and saw the greatness. I saw what I thought was a specialty player, like a player that was a gadget player that was not going to be an every down guy. And then he goes and just has this incredible run, a run to stardom, shows that he is absolutely an every down guy. And I was getting I told you so's. And then, my reservations were always about, okay, he runs upright. He's going to take hits. I don't know that he's a bell cow back that you can feed him 25, 30 times a game. And if you do, how long will he be healthy? And then the injuries came after he started getting the usage. And then I felt somewhat vindicated, but you were right and I was wrong. You had him down as a great back. I thought he was a specialty player, and now he's a 49er. So how would you describe what you saw from Christain in college? Because, early on, David Shaw didn't show a lot of interest in playing either Christian Love or Bryce Love, or Christain McCaffrey or Bryce Love as young players in the system. It was almost like he wanted to be, kind of proven. They wanted them to prove it on the practice field. I thought they kind of were underutilized early in their career, and then eventually Dave came around and saw the greatness that everybody else saw.
Well, I think it was frustrating for those who went and saw practice and clearly saw that McCaffrey was the best running back on the team, and I think one of the best in the country, even as a true freshman. Like, he just had that ability, the start and stop, the hands. Some guys just have a feel. Go back to one of my teammates, Troy Walters, small guy, 5'7". He won the Biletnikoff. His spatial awareness and body control, I think, separated him from not only defensive backs, but other wide receivers, and made him one of the best. And I think Christain McCaffrey has those same type of skills. And you had said, maybe he's a Wes Welker type player at the next level. But if you watch him in college, the majority of his yards came from an I-back set, and he would use that fullback very creatively to set up the blocks. I mean, he has that feel for what the defense is going to do, what they want to do. And he uses that to set up his blocks, fake to the outside, cut back in, or fake to the inside, cut back out. And he just makes everybody around him better. So I think it's almost a shame to see him the way he was used in Carolina, where he's on the field for 96% of the snaps. I mean, you had said earlier, I don't think he's the bell cow 25 carry a game guy. Larry, there aren't many of those left. I don't think there's any of those guys left.
Right. Derrick Henry and a couple others.
Even Derrick Henry's been banged up. It's just too long of a season to expect guys Eddie George he's a thing of the past. He's a dinosaur. So hopefully, I trust Shanahan and what he can do offensively. I think they're going to put him in a position where they can create mismatches. He's going to get one-on-one in space, and he's going to make some linebackers and safeties look foolish at times. And not only that, but he's not the focal point of this offense. As soon as defenses start to focus on him, they're going to get beat by Debo and Ayuk and Kittle. And he's got the best fullback in the game in Juszczyk to lead the way for him. So I'm excited to see what he can do in this offense. And clearly the start of the season hasn't been the way the 49ers fans and certainly the players had hoped, losing a couple games that I think everybody thought they should win. But with this added piece, it's just another wrinkle that defenses have to prepare for. And he's capable of making big plays when he gets the ball. So, again, I'm very excited to see how they kind of slot him, how they use him in the offense, both as an I-back, spread out as a wide receiver, and the mismatches and the pressure it takes off the other players on the offense. I mean, everybody's going to get better now as a result of having a weapon like that on the team.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he's an incredible player. He's a great player. He's 5'11". He's 205 pounds. He's 26, from Castle Rock, Colorado, played at Stanford. Carolina took him 8th pick overall in the 2017 draft, 5 picks after John Lynch used the 3rd pick in the draft on Solomon Thomas. I got a feeling that probably Lynch, probably has been kicking himself ever since that he didn't take McCaffrey and that he took Solomon Thomas. And I would imagine that if there's anything that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan agree on, it's their love for this player, because, Kyle, obviously was around his dad and Christian's father was Ed McCaffrey, was a great Stanford player. He was on the 94 Niners that won their last Super Bowl winning team. And I think he was Kyle's favorite player. Kyle admitted earlier this year that he babysat for Christian for once or twice as a youngster. So I got to think that Shanahan loves this player and just has all kinds of visions of how the creative ways he can utilize him. And I think for Lynch, this is kind of correcting a mistake, right? I mean, Solly was a good player at Stanford, but clearly, I bet if you gave John truth serum, he'd tell you, man, I took the wrong Stanford guy there.
Yes, I think it would have been. Imagine that piece, Christian McCaffrey piece of the puzzle over the last few years with the Niners offense, right? And with the way the 49ers offense is built, they're not necessarily a stretch the field type team, right? Jimmy Garoppolo's strength lies in accuracy under 15-yard throws, and that's where Christian McCaffrey is probably at his best. But I agree with you. I think that the family ties and the history between Stanford and the Shanahans and the McCaffreys, it makes it a pretty special opportunity. If this thing works out well and the team goes in the right direction, there'll be a lot of celebrating between families and generations of families. So I think that does add something to that move, but only if they win, right? Only if it's successful as we look back in February.
Yeah, no question. He's a Pro Bowler. He's a 2-time first team All Pro.
Could have been Heisman winner, by the way.
Yeah, should have been the Heisman winner. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that this guy didn't get the Heisman is just criminal. I think this is a player that has been underestimated, for a good portion of his career. Tell us about the guy, because he seems to be very humble, very quiet, all about football, all business on the football field. He's not a me guy, but he's not a soft guy either. This guy's a tough player who can take hits and I always just thought of him as the consummate pro, but you probably got a chance to know his personality a little bit. What kind of guy is Christian McCaffrey?
He's kind of a quiet guy. I remember talking to the coaching staff right before the start of the season, his true freshman year, and them say, all right, who are some freshmen that kind of stand out to you? And this is kind of off to the side. This wasn't on the air.
Sure.
And a couple different coaches said this guy McCaffrey is a freak in the locker room, in the weight room. Like he's He is the hardest working guy we have. There's no limits. He's one of the strongest guys we have, and they are very careful of giving praise to true freshmen coming in, and they want to have those guys earn it. Everybody had talked about how awesome this guy was coming in that summer before his freshman year, and how he just outworked everybody. And that offseason, he got so much better because he outworked everybody. He could not get enough of the training and what goes into making a successful football player. He watches the tape. He understands his body. He takes really good care of himself. Really smart guy. And so I think hearing that praise from a coaching staff and the strength and conditioning staff that never said that about freshmen. I mean, maybe Andrew Luck, like they were shocked how good he was, but to be effusive in that praise of a young man physically and how prepared he was and how hard he worked, I think showed that he had a chance to be something special. And sure enough, he ended up breaking Barry Sanders, what was it, 30-year-old all-purpose yards record for a single season in college football, because he can do everything. He's a receiver. He was a slot guy. He could run the screens. He was an eye back. He returned punts and kicks. I mean, the guy could probably play defense if they asked him to. I mean, he's that type of a all-around great football player. He understands the game. I mean, you would expect a guy who was around it with his dad playing so long in the NFL, that he absorbed some of that. But very rarely in my career did you come across guys who were the most talented and also were the hardest working, right? I think in those rare exceptions, you had the superstars, guys like Jerry Rice. I think Christain McCaffrey has those two things. He's incredibly physically talented, and he works really hard. His teammates like him. So if he can stay healthy, that's been, the hiccup in his career. If he can stay healthy, I think he has a chance to do something special in the next 3, 4, 5 years of his career.
Yeah, 2014, he was a freshman at Stanford. He played all 13 games as a true freshman, and he shared the backfield with Ramon Wright and Sanders and Kelsey Young. Had a 52-yard receiving touchdown against UC Davis in his collegiate debut. Finished that year 300 rushing yards on 43 carries, 251 receiving yards on 17 receptions, and a couple touchdowns to go along with it. I mean, he was, very physically developed. One thing I like about him now is that, he put on some bulk while he was at Stanford in the weight room. He's obviously a very serious, dedicated weightlifter. But he never, some guys fall in love in the weight room with that, and they just get stiff, and they lift beyond what they should be lifting, and then they just get bigger, stiffer. This guy kind of built up his body, but then understood the need to remain flexible and loose. And so he looks very similar physically to the player who we saw in his, towards the tail end of his Stanford career. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I think he understands that, his ability to change direction and his burst are probably two of his biggest strengths. So putting on too much weight would inhibit that ability. And he understands that he has to keep a certain body type. And you mentioned his upright running style, and he's not the biggest, pounding back. He's not a 240 pounder, but a little bit like, you look at some of the great running backs, they very rarely get hit hard, like hit head on, knock backwards. They have that ability at the last second to change their body angle or avoid the hit and get that extra yard after contact. And I think he has that ability. I mean, his injuries have been more just tweaks here and there. And so I think that just comes from overuse. I mean, the percentage of snaps that he's been on the field for Carolina when he's been healthy, it's the highest in the league, I think, year after year. So figuring out a way where Shanahan can use him, but still keep him healthy for the next, 11 games. That's going to be, I think, a key to not only certainly Christain McCaffrey's success, but I think the offense's sustained success, because he just gives you so many more ways to beat a defense. And if there's one thing Kyle Shanahan has shown, he can get creative with the right pieces and give defenses headaches by the way he creates mismatches across the field, uses play action, and uses running backs in receiving routes. I'm curious to see what he can do, because he's developed some plays over the years that have been fun to watch.
And Todd, don't think 11 games, think 14 games.
That's right.
14 games.
That's right.
Wrapping up in Glendale in the Super Bowl. Through the first 6 games this year with the Panthers, McCaffrey has 393 rushing yards, 277 receiving yards, and 3 total touchdowns. In all 6 games, he's had at least 100 yards from scrimmage. So, I mean, he's a productive player in the prime of his career, and the 49ers are getting him for 4 draft choices, none of which are number ones. Now, you're a former quarterback, so you can truly appreciate the safety valve back. How would you want to utilize Christian, and how do you think Kyle's going to how's Kyle going to utilize him to really make this offense explosive? How do you anticipate his utilization looking?
I still would like to see him get 10 carries a game from like an eye set or using Juszczyk, who I think is, the best blocking fullback in the game. There's not many blocking fullbacks left, but he's a difference maker. And I think Christian's ability to help, they have, if Trent Williams comes back, I think they have a solid offensive line with Juszczyk and Kittle. They can wear teams out. So I don't want to get totally away from that and become, get away from the hard nose, wear out a defense. But I think his ability to run the screens, I think you put him in the slot a few times, you motion him out, see who's going to guard him. And if they're going to put a linebacker on him, that's a mismatch they should take advantage of all day. If they put a safety on him, that means that there's one less safety to keep an eye on, Debo or Ayuk. So I think there's it's not just how many touches he gets. I'd love to see him get 15 a game, right? If he can average 8 yards a touch, that's some production out of that position. But then I think Shanahan's ability to get one-on-one coverage because the defense has to adjust to McCaffrey. I think you're going to see better production across the board from everybody. And I think, listen, offensive linemen love it. There were a number of plays at Stanford where Christain McCaffrey, it wasn't the right play call, but Christain McCaffrey gets to the line of scrimmage. There's an unblocked defender at the point of attack. He makes that guy miss and gets 40 yards. That makes everybody, offensive linemen, appreciate that, right? They don't like 2nd and 12s, or if they miss a block, if Kittle misses a block in space and McCaffrey makes that guy miss, everybody's happy, right? Everybody's working harder together, and certainly the offense and more players can be productive.
By the way, he was the 2nd running back taken in the 2017 NFL draft. Do you want to venture a guess as who the number 1 running back was taken in that draft?
Was it Dalvin Cook? No.
Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette. And no doubt McCaffrey's been the better of the two. In some ways, I think this is the dream addition for Kyle Shanahan. When you think of Kyle's offense, I think of a lot of the pre-snap shifts and motions that define coverage and allow the quarterback to really know, is it zone, is it man, are they playing halves coverage? I mean, what kind of look are they getting? And all the shifting and the motions kind of force defenses to define themselves pre-snap. And I think McCaffrey, in a lot of ways, is the perfect player for Kyle's offense, because Kyle's going to use him. There's going to be some shifts and motions, and they're going to see that they've got, twice a game, McCaffrey isolated on a linebacker, and everybody's going to know it. Christian's going to know it. Jimmy's going to know it. Kyle's going to know it. And then it's just a matter of, can Jimmy, get the ball there? Because this is a guy who will crucify you if you can mismatch him on a bigger, slower player in space.
No, I agree. I think he's got a lot of the qualities that if you gave Shanahan a blank slate to create the player that he wants, it's probably going to be pretty close to Christain McCaffrey. So great fit.
How's he different than Debo in your mind? Because, I mean, they're both versatile. They're both can be used as running backs or wide receivers. Debo kind of runs the receiver patterns with zero fear. which is, to me, that's my takeaway when I watch him. I'm like, wow, this guy runs across the middle. He's not worried about the safety knocking him off. He feels like he's more physical, or a bigger, more physical body player than these DBs, and he just has total confidence. He doesn't hear footsteps. He's not fearful of being led into a crowd. But how would you compare these two players? Because they're both kind of jack of all trades, but they're also quite different.
Yeah, I think Debo is more of a power guy, yards after contact. McCaffrey is more of a make a guy miss, right? I mean, Debo runs through tackles. McCaffrey has the ability to run around them or by them. He's got that open field speed. I mean, both are fast, and I would say both have a good. I mentioned it earlier, but spatial awareness and the ability to get open and find that open spot and connect with the quarterback. Jimmy G knows where Debo is going to be and where he wants the ball because he's consistent with his routes, and they've worked on it time and time again. I think McCaffrey has that same type of attention to detail that good offenses need, that consistency, and I think Jimmy G is going to love having that. You said it earlier, kind of that outlet ability to check it down and get 12 yards. Play callers love that too. If 2nd and 8 becomes 1st and 10, 15 yards down the field, that helps the offense maintain, get that rhythm. And that's the type of thing that he can do. I mean, there's so many pieces now to this offense. If you're the defensive coordinator, what do you do? Who do you stop? Who's my focus this week? Debo? All right, Kittle and McCaffrey are going to have big games. You focus more on stopping McCaffrey. All right, Kittle and Ayuk are going to. I think there's so much now that Shanahan can do. And by the way, Shanahan loves to run the ball, right? We're talking a lot about the passing game and Jimmy G. I think if Shanahan had his choice, they'd throw it 26 times a game and rush it 35. And that McCaffrey can still get it done on the ground. So again, those offensive meetings have to be fun now as they look at the tape, figuring out how they're going to attack the defense each and every week.
How do you see McCaffrey compared to a guy like Mostert? Can they run the outside stretch, the zone run game? Can he get to the edge at will like a Raheem Mostert? Because they really haven't had the replacement back for Mostert this year, and it's kind of made them run the ball differently than they've run it in the past. Will this allow Shanahan to go back to the zone read and get more outside?
I think so. I think his speed and quickness allows him to get to the edge. I think what certainly at Stanford, what we saw, his vision, right? It's not just, okay, there's a linebacker coming inside out, I got to outrun him. How do I adjust my speed and tempo after getting the handoff to set up that block where I'm going to be able to cut it back? I mean, he has that type of understanding of the blocking schemes and what the defense is going to do, and the vision. When that cutback's there, he plants his foot and he's gone. And so I think that's what you need in a zone, outside zone kind of read back, the ability to cut back, but the ability to see what the blocks are doing, where the defense is going to be, and how he can best set up the offensive lineman and the fullback and the tight end to make the right block, and then he can cut off it. And he has that understanding.
What do you think are the best way to utilize him as a runner? Do you like him as a trap runner? Do you like his ability to pick and slide? Do you like his ability to get to the edge in the outside zone and cut it back? The one cut and go kind of a runner? Where do you think he's, what kind of runs do you think favor him? Are there any that you think that he struggles with?
That's a good question. I mean, he had the great lead back at Stanford. I think the majority of his runs came from the I formation. We don't see that much I formation in the NFL these days. It just doesn't happen. But I still think you can get use check in an offset, strong formation. I mean, if you can get Trent Williams, Kittle, use check leading the way for McCaffrey, whether it's an outside stretch or just at the point of attack, it's not a defense in the NFL that can do anything about that, right? They're just bigger, stronger, faster than any defense they're going to play. So I think getting those sort of using that combination and then getting him out in space, whether it's to the edge or the ability to cut it back. My dog interrupts.
He doesn't like that offset eye.
Yes, exactly. But I think from what I've seen, he can be effective. I mean, he can be effective, however, right? Shotgun, and you hand it to him on a draw, and he's going to make the right decision. But I think utilizing the strength of that offense, which is the strength of that run offense, which is those three guys kind of at the point of attack, and letting McCaffrey, get ahead of steam and then make the right decision, that's where they can be most effective.
What do you think of his blend with Trey? And what was your thoughts on Trey Lance? I haven't talked to you all year as far as about your thoughts on Trey Lance. We didn't get to see a lot of Trey Lance. So I think we're still all of us are still kind of defining what he is as a player. Where is he strong? Where is he weak? Where does he still need development? But how do you see eventually Garoppolo will be gone? Trey Lance, we're all assuming is going to be the quarterback of the future. And I would think this works partially on the cap because of that reality, right? That Trey's on a rookie deal and you got a big wage earner in McCaffrey, and he could take some of that money that Jimmy's making this year, and it probably all works out. But how do you see the blend of Trey's skill set and McCaffrey?
To your point, I don't think we've seen enough of Trey Lance to have a good idea of what he can do. I think he's still learning a lot. I think the most positive thing about him is the reactions from his coaches and teammates on how hard he works, on how much he's put into being good. He wants it. He just hasn't played a lot of football. From what I've seen, he needs to control his speed. He doesn't throw a very catchable ball. And what I mean by that, he throws a 20-yard out route the same as he throws like a check down, right? He needs to have sort of that feel and timing for an offense and the way he throws the ball for them to be consistent. He's going to make some great plays. He's a tremendous athlete, and he's got the arm strength to push it down the field. I mean, that's the biggest difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo is he can chuck it 70 yards down there and hit his receivers in stride. But he's not going to be a complete quarterback until he learns how to hit those under 5-yard routes where he hits the receiver in stride, and there's yards after the catch. I think that continues to be the biggest room for improvement that I've seen from Trey Lance, throwing that catchable ball and the accuracy under 10 yards. I mean, we've seen Jimmy still make some terrible decisions, and he's been a starting quarterback for a long time. So I think the decision-making is something that quarterbacks still, 15 years in are learning to do, eliminating mistakes. I haven't seen as much bad decisions from Trey Lance. It's more the physical part. And if Coach Shanahan can continue to help him grow, if he can come back healthy and be the same athlete, because that's a big part of his game. But I think you're right. The teams that are built for success are the ones with quarterbacks on a rookie scale, because you can build so much around, those quarterbacks based on what they're earning. If they prove to be the guy, I mean, that's I think the trend that we've seen over the last few years. We're going to draft a guy in the first round. If he works out, great. We have a chance to build around him. If not, we're going to draft a guy in the first round 2 years later and hope that we hit with him. Like, you just don't see the big free agent quarterback anymore. I mean, minus Matthew Stafford, but we've seen what's happened to the Rams this year. They mortgaged a lot of their team to win that one Super Bowl. It's rare that you see that 8-year vet who's pretty good become the starter, because teams are either going to go spend a lot of money on a veteran who's great or who they think is great, like we saw this year with Russell Wilson, which didn't pan out, or they're going to draft a guy and hope that they can be successful and not pay them much the first 4 years of their NFL career.
Two last questions with Todd Husak. And Todd, I really appreciate your time, man. It's awesome talking ball with you. I forgot how much I enjoyed talking ball with you.
I know.
Seriously, man. We've had some great radio segments through the years and great pregame segments, and it's just awesome. I first, let me just say this, and I've said this on the air, and I've said this to your face. And I don't want to embarrass you, but in my opinion, you're the best color analyst I've heard on football. I think you're really good. To me, when Dave and you were working together, that was like, yeah, you guys were doing Stanford football, but I think, we were looking at a truly awesome tandem of a great analyst and a great play-by-play guy. And I know I've told Dave that, I've told you that, but I want everybody to know that I really believe that. I think you're as good an analyst as I've seen, college or pro.
Well, thank you.
Two last ones, though. My takeaway after watching the 49ers last week was obviously Mariota played great. Arthur Smith had a phenomenal game plan. So credit those two guys. But from the Niner perspective, I just thought that and I said it afterwards, that the Niner offense lacked dynamic weapons. And that's with everybody healthy and everybody rolling. They just lack dynamic weapons. And it's like they added Danny Gray and they added Ray McCloud. They got deep with Ray McCloud. He dropped it. His ball skills are just okay. He fumbled 6 times last year. Danny Gray's a rookie receiver. He's going through trials and tribulations of being a rookie receiver. He's not ready to get on the field and contribute. So that's the deep speed. Then there's Juwan Jennings. He's not a fast guy. Then you got Ayuk. He's more of a big-bodied physical guy. He's got some speed, but he's not a burner. And then there's Debo, who's incredible run after the catch, but he's not a burner. So I just looked at their weapons, especially when they fouled down 2 touchdowns in the second half, and I thought, man, they can't get any chunk yardage plays. Even the announcers were saying it. They don't look very dynamic. And so I made that comment. I said, they don't look very dynamic. But then you think of the Niners dilemma. It's like, well, even if we got some receiver with 4.1 speed, the quarterback that we have right now and Jimmy Garoppolo, his deep ball kind of hangs. And even if you had a receiver with 4.1 speed and the ball didn't hang, your McGlinchey's dinged up, Trent Williams is out, and you may not have the tackles to give your quarterback enough time to let those receivers free themselves up down the field. So I look at McCaffrey as exactly the piece that the 49ers need. They needed a dynamic player that can help them in the run game and pass game, who's a real threat that everybody has to honor, but also that doesn't stress out their tackles and has ability to catch it short and make the big play, as opposed to Garoppolo's got to airmail it down the field. So I think this is the perfect player for their current situation. How do you see it? How do you see the marriage of Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle's offense, and this particular player being added to the mix?
Well, I think you're right. I think a lack of big plays is what's sort of slowed down the Niners all season, right? I think if you're a defense looking to stop them maybe before McCaffrey, you're playing inside leverage on the receivers to take away the slants, because you're going to take your chances on Jimmy G throwing it outside or down the field, and you're going to put some pressure on the line of scrimmage to try to slow down the run game. I think having McCaffrey spreads the field a little bit and forces the defense to choose how they're going to do it. If they're going to come up and try to stop McCaffrey and load the box at the line of scrimmage, I think they have to figure out a way to get George Kittle more involved, right? And by the way, stopping the run game means you're committing at the snap, run some play action and see if you can get Kittle open. I mean, we've seen those plays over the last couple of years. We haven't seen as much of it this season. I think so. I'd like to see Kittle's production go up, and then a lot of Deebo Samuel's big plays are short slants that he's just able to run through a tackle and straight arm a safety, and he's gone. And so using him in different ways, we haven't seen. I don't think we've seen as much from him out of the backfield, not just at tailback, but using him, in motion on play action, get him into the flats a little bit more. Part of it is just getting them more touches. I mean, Jimmy G's not completing a lot of passes. So how do they throw more higher percentage passes where they're getting the ball into the hands of their playmakers, and they still have to take shots? You have to keep a defense honest, set up 2 or 3 plays a game where you're just telling Jimmy, if it's there, hit it. If it's not, throw it 4 yards over his head. Don't risk an interception, but they have to put pressure on a defense to respect the deep ball, or they will continue to sit on that underneath stuff, which is really what Shanahan has been so productive in over the years.
One from the chat, Ray Barrio, says, you don't think CMC is a little redundant with Debo? And then he misspelled redundant, and he said, he threw another one in there. Sorry about that. Redundant. Do you think Debo and CMC, is there a redundancy there, or do you see them as different, separate weapons that can be utilized differently?
I think they're both playmakers. They're both, I think Debo is a more physical back where they can get it to him, on underneath routes. And as I mentioned earlier, he can run through those arm tackles, where McCaffrey's a guy who's going to make people miss in space. So both are. I don't think there's a redundancy. I think you can still line up Debo at wide receiver 50 snaps a game and target him 10 times and then figure out a couple plays a game to get him creative, where I think you're better off having Christain McCaffrey as an eye back or in the shotgun where he's taking the handoffs. But again, I think a successful game plan gets those guys 15 touches each, and then you spread out the rest between Kittle, Ayuk, and maybe a backup running back. Because I know, you're going to, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're going to want to run the ball, like I said, 30, 35 times a game and keep that part of your system where then the play action works better. But McCaffrey's just such a dynamic runner. I think he makes that run game better.
Last one, buddy, and I appreciate your time, man. It's so great to catch up with you. This one's, I feel like you're like ideally suited to answer this question. It's Alumni Weekend, and they're honoring the NFC Championship team that went to the Super Bowl with Jim Harbaugh. Harbs is going to be there. He's coming to town. We were joking before the live stream that you went as Jim Harbaugh to a Halloween party that Jim Harbaugh was at.
Unbeknownst to me, he was there. Yeah.
What did when he saw you, did he instantly know that you were him?
I don't think he got it. He's like, "What's this?"
Of course not.
Like, what are you doing?
Did you have to explain it?
I did. I said, it's a tribute to you, Jim. It's also a costume that I could put together in 5 seconds because I didn't have anything, and I just
right.
The khaki pants and the Stanford polo with the hat and the whistle.
And there's no face painting involved, right?
No, it was cheap and easy.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I could top you when I was in college, and my girlfriend would be like, "Hey, we're going to a Halloween party." We would we had like those hard hats and the orange vest from like the guys who work on the side of the road. Oh, yeah. And so we just throw those on, so you're wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Now you get the orange vest and a hard hat. I mean, it was like it was a absolutely awesome Halloween costume back in the day.
I love it.
No, but I got to ask you about Harbaugh, because you saw Harbaugh with the Niners. You saw Harbaugh resurrect Stanford. You got a lot of knowledge. You probably talked to Jim Harbaugh countless times. And now you've watched Kyle Shanahan, do some great things with the 49ers, 2 NFC championship games in the last 3 years. How would you, first of all, could you say one is better than the other? What is the strengths and weaknesses of a Harbaugh? What are the strengths and weaknesses of a Kyle? How would you compare them? Do you hold them in equal regard? Do you hold Kyle in higher regard because his offense produces more points? Do you hold Jimmy in higher regard because he assembles these incredible coaching staffs, whether it be in college or in the pros? I mean, what do you view? How would you compare those two? Is there one better than the other?
I think Jim, I don't know if there was another coach in the country that could have come into Stanford at the way they were in 2000. He came in 2007 and got them going. Stanford was the worst program in the country. They were bottom 10 in offense and defense nationally. That they were bare of talent, and Jim Harbaugh came in, and you probably remember his first press conference in the Pac-10, or I guess the Pac-12 at that point, talked about beating SC and winning the national championship. Right. And Stanford was coming off a 1-11 season. But he did it. He beat SC, and it didn't take him long to get this program going and recruit.
What's your deal, bro?
That was a couple years later when Stanford scored. I mean, they were blowing out SC, and Stanford scored late to get 48 points, and he went for 2 to try to get 50. And he missed it. But then they had like a pick 6 late in the game, so they ended up scoring 55. Yeah, and that was when Pete Carroll said, "What's your deal?"
What's your deal, bro?
But I think that's so good. But I think his ability to come in and, Jim's a lot from an intensity standpoint, an enthusiasm standpoint, but it's real. Like, he wants to win, and he doesn't want to win football games. He wants to win at everything. He wants to win at recruiting. He wants to win at practice. Like, he's playing pickup basketball. He wants to win. He wants to beat you. And that's that's a singular focus that I haven't seen in too many people in my life. And it's what makes him successful. I mean, taking Michigan to the Final Four last year, that was a great story. Doing it at his alma mater. So I have a lot of respect for Jim and what he did, certainly the Stanford football program, because it was in a bad way. And they took them to, literally bottom 10 in the country in offense and defense to top 5 ranking in 4 years. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And load that roster with NFL talent. Shanahan, I think, is similarly laser focused. It's just a little more internal, probably. Like he's not the rah pound his chest guy. From what I've seen from his offensive schemes over the years, that's fun to watch to see how he. I love watching Andy Reid and his game plan and how he sets things up, not just within a game, but over the weeks. He understands how coaches watch tape, and he's putting in things to counter what he did 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he fools defenses that way. So I think Shanahan has that same type of understanding of the offense, how to call plays, how to set up defenses, how to get the most out of his players. And obviously he's had success. When his quarterback's been healthy, they've been pretty successful. And I'm hopeful that this is another year, even with Trey Lance injured. He's got an experienced quarterback who's gotten him to the NFC Championship. I can't wait to see if this missing piece of Christain McCaffrey is what takes the Niners to the next level and gets them to the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't it be incredible? I look at the end of that. Other reason I love this deal from Lynch's perspective, and I think Lynch is really an underrated GM. I really do. I wasn't sure at first, but now I'm convinced they're stacked. Then they hit in day 3. They hit after the draft with undrafted guys. He's got a good feel, and I think he's smart. He surrounds himself with smart people. He knows when to listen to his people. I'm very impressed by John and all that he has done to transition from broadcaster to, you're running an NFL team. He's very successful. That being said, last question. Yep. I think this is a great deal from John's perspective because I think it's there for the taking in the NFC. I don't see a team in the NFC that can stand between the 49ers and a trip to Glendale for the Super Bowl. Now, if you told me Buffalo beats them once they get there or Kansas City beats them when they get there, okay, I can envision it. But I can't picture any of these teams, not Dallas, not Philly, not Green Bay, not Tampa, not Atlanta, I don't see any team in the NFC that I think – no, the 49ers can't get by that team. And now that they've added McCaffrey, that only makes me more emboldened in my thought on it. I've got Niners Bills in the Super Bowl, and I'm predicting Niners to win, but that's just because I'm a Niner guy. What do you think? If as we're sitting here on the 21st of October, if I said who's going to the Super Bowl, now that you saw the McCaffrey deal, the scope of the contenders in both conferences, what do you think?
You're not buying the Giants and Vikings at 5-1?
Yeah, I'm not buying Daniel Jones.
No, I agree.
But I am impressed by Brian Daboll. My goodness, they're turning it around there.
They've turned it around. I think Philly's darn good. To see Jalen Hurts and his maturity and growth and become one of the best offenses. They're putting up big plays and points, and their defense has put a lot of pressure on the opposition. I think they're probably, from what I've seen so far, the best team in the NFC. But I think the Niners, if they could, I have heard McCaffrey's playing this weekend. I know they've said he's kind of, we'll see how he can absorb the playbook. I'm guessing if he can, he'll get in there 5 to 10 plays just to try to see what he can do. But as he grows into the offense, how they figure out how to use him, the timing, I'll take that offensive lineup if everybody's healthy over Phillies any day of the week. So I think you're right. I think the NFC West for sure is not nearly as good as we thought it could be. And the NFC in general, when, probably the three, from a record standpoint, the 3 best teams are Minnesota, New York, and Philly. I don't think many people projected that to be the case. So I still think the Niners defense has a chance to be one of the best, or if not the best in the NFL. But they need some dynamic playmakers, and they got one of the best in the NFL yesterday.
Two little chats. Mark Graves says if the 49ers are 100% healthy, I say they are the favorites in the NFC. I would agree. Clifford Rickard says, Larry, a score prediction against the Chiefs. I'm saying 27-24 49ers. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think the Niners off defense with all the injuries can shut down Mahomes, but I also think the more that I look at the Chiefs, the more that I think those rookie corners will not be able to stand up to the 49er receivers. So I'll say 49ers by a field goal this weekend at Levi's. All right, buddy. Hey, it was great to chop it up with you, man. And is there anything, you tell me about your family? You got the little guy playing all kinds of sports. You got your girls playing sports. Man, look at that. We both got a little bit more gray in the goat. Man. But you're looking good, and it's great to see you.
Everybody's healthy. So,
good.
Yeah, looking forward to a fun weekend. It's homecoming weekend for Stanford, too. So hopefully they can get a win over ASU.
There you go. Thanks, Todd. Good to see you, man.
All right, take care, Larry.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah, we ain't never fall back.